After Carl Dean passed away, something changed in Dolly Parton. For years, she brushed off rumors, laughed through the gossip, and kept her marriage hidden from the public eye. But after losing Carl, Dolly suddenly started opening up more than ever before. Old stories about Hollywood co-stars, emotional struggles, and private heartbreaks started coming back into the spotlight again, and fans began wondering if she was finally revealing the real truth behind one of entertainment's most mysterious marriages. Dolly Rebecca Parton was born on January 19, 1946, inside a tiny two-room cabin deep in the mountains of Tennessee. She was the fourth of 12 children, and life was far from easy. Her family struggled badly with money, and according to stories from the time, her father even paid the doctor who delivered her with a sack of cornmeal because they couldn't afford cash. Still, even with all the hardship, the Parton home was full of music, faith, and storytelling. Dolly's mother sang old mountain songs around the house, while church gave young Dolly her first taste of performing in front of people. Before long, she already knew she wanted a life on stage. By 6 years old, Dolly was singing in church with confidence way beyond her age. The problem was, the family couldn't afford instruments. She started playing a homemade guitar until one of her uncles finally gave her a real one when she was 8 years old. That moment pushed her even harder toward the dream she already had burning inside her head. Her rise started quickly after that. Dolly began appearing on local radio and television around East Tennessee and built a reputation as a talented young singer. At just 13 years old, she recorded her first song, Puppy Love, and soon after stepped onto the legendary Grand Ole Opry stage. That night, she met Johnny Cash. The country icon gave her advice she never forgot. He told her to trust herself and follow her own instincts creatively. Those words stayed with Dolly for the rest of her career and helped shape the fearless artist she would later become. Right after graduating high school, Dolly packed her bags and headed straight to Nashville to chase her dream of becoming a country star. But one of the most important moments of her life didn't happen in a recording studio. It happened outside a laundromat. Dolly had just arrived in Nashville with a suitcase full of dirty clothes, so she stopped at a local laundromat. While waiting outside, a young man named Carl Thomas Dean drove past in a white Chevy pickup truck. He noticed Dolly standing in the sun and pulled over to warn her she might get sunburned. Years later, Carl admitted he instantly knew she was the woman he wanted to marry. Dolly felt a connection too, but romance wasn't her main focus at the time. She came to Nashville to build a career, not settle down. Growing up in the country had taught her to be careful around strangers. So instead of agreeing to a regular date, she invited Carl to visit while she babysat at her aunt and uncle's home. Carl kept coming back day after day, and eventually, their bond became impossible to ignore. When they finally went on a real date, Carl skipped fancy restaurants completely and took Dolly to meet his parents instead. Oddly enough, that bold move impressed her because it showed just how serious he already was about her. Still, the relationship moved at different speeds. Carl was ready for commitment almost immediately, while Dolly stayed cautious about marriage. She loved him deeply, but she also understood how many women lost their dreams after getting married during that era. After helping raise so many younger siblings already, Dolly had no interest in becoming a traditional housewife. She wanted freedom, independence, and a chance to build something for herself. Luckily, Carl was nothing like the controlling husbands people expected back then. Quiet and grounded, he actually preferred staying far away from attention and had no problem handling things at home while Dolly chased her career. People who knew Carl often described him as ruggedly handsome, like a mix between Clint Eastwood and the Marlboro Man. But the biggest reason their marriage worked was simple. Dolly loved fame, while Carl wanted absolutely nothing to do with it. Carl visited the studio once while Dolly was recording Dumb Blonde during the mid-1960s, but he hated the experience. Hearing the same song repeated over and over was enough for him to decide show business was not his world. He happily returned to his quiet life while Dolly kept climbing higher. Before getting married, the couple reportedly made a few simple agreements. Carl wouldn't be dragged into celebrity culture, and Dolly wouldn't give up her dreams to stay home. Somehow, that balance worked perfectly for them. In 1966, Dolly and Carl officially got married. Dolly was just 20 years old, while Carl was 23. Their marriage looked very different from most couples at the time. Carl focused on his paving business, while Dolly pushed harder than ever toward country music stardom. Marriage didn't slow her down at all. If anything, it made her even more determined. Dolly quickly landed a songwriting job with Combine Publishing and started writing closely with her uncle Bill Owens. Together, they spent countless hours creating songs and pitching material around Nashville. But there was one major problem. Dolly didn't just want to write hit songs for other people. She wanted to sing them herself. After signing with Monument Records, Dolly immediately faced resistance. Executives at the label didn't believe her high soprano voice fit country music. Instead, they pushed her toward a softer pop sound because they thought it would sell better. Dolly tried to make it work, but the results were disappointing. Most of the songs failed to connect with audiences, except for a small success with "Happy, Happy Birthday Baby." Deep down, Dolly knew the music didn't feel like the real her. Then, everything changed in 1966 when one of the songs she wrote climbed to number 6 on the country charts. Suddenly, Monument Records realized they may have seriously underestimated her instincts. The label finally allowed Dolly to record real country music, and she wasted no time proving herself right. She released "Dumb Blonde," which became a hit on the country charts, followed by "Something Fishy," which performed even better. Slowly but surely, Dolly Parton was becoming impossible for Nashville to ignore. Just like that, the pop experiment was finished. Nashville was finally getting the real Dolly Parton. In 1967, she released her debut album, "Hello, I'm Dolly." The project introduced fans to a performer who felt completely fresh while still carrying that classic country charm people loved. Critics responded positively, and the album spent weeks climbing the Billboard country charts. For the first time, it felt like Dolly was truly carving out her own lane in country music. But right when things started moving in the right direction, another major challenge appeared. That same year, Porter Wagoner invited her to join The Porter Wagoner Show, one of the biggest platforms in country music at the time. On paper, it looked like a dream opportunity. Reality was much rougher. Dolly had been brought in to replace fan favorite Norma Jean, and audiences made it painfully clear they did not approve. Whenever Dolly walked on stage, crowds shouted Norma Jean's name instead. Some people even mocked Dolly during commercial breaks. For a young singer still trying to prove herself, it could have crushed her confidence completely. But Porter Wagoner refused to let her fail. Every time the cameras started rolling again, Porter defended Dolly publicly and praised her talent. More importantly, he kept putting her front and center because he believed audiences would eventually come around if they heard her enough. And slowly, they did. Fans started connecting with the chemistry between Porter and Dolly during their duets, and before long, the same people who once rejected her were now cheering her on. Behind the scenes, Porter was also pushing hard to help her career grow even bigger. At the time, Porter was already successful with RCA Records and became convinced the label needed Dolly too. RCA finally agreed, but there was one catch. They wanted Dolly and Porter recording duets together. In 1967, they released The Last Thing on My Mind, and by the next year, the song became a top 10 hit. RCA immediately realized the duo could make serious money. To the label, Porter and Dolly looked like country music gold. But Dolly never forgot her bigger goal. Even while the duets climbed the charts, she stayed focused on becoming a successful solo artist too. That created tension in her career. Her collaborations with Porter Wagoner were exploding in popularity, while her solo songs struggled to reach the same level. The situation became even more emotional in 1968 when the Country Music Association named Porter and Dolly Vocal Group of the Year. It was a huge accomplishment, but there was likely a bittersweet feeling behind it. Dolly was finally getting recognition, but mostly as part of a team instead of as an individual artist. Both Dolly and Porter knew something had to change. By then, Porter had become more than just her duet partner. He was also helping produce her music, and together they started searching for a way to finally break through with her solo career. Eventually, they took a risky gamble. Dolly recorded Mule Skinner Blues, a song normally connected to male performers. At the time, it was considered a bold move because few women in country music tackled songs with that kind of rough energy and attitude. Nobody knew how audiences would react. The gamble paid off in a huge way. The song shot up the charts and became one of Dolly's biggest solo successes so far. Suddenly, fans were seeing her differently. She wasn't just the sweet singer standing beside Porter Wagoner anymore. She was becoming a major star in her own right. Then came the moment that changed everything. Dolly released Joshua, a song she wrote herself. The track climbed all the way to number 1 on the country charts, giving her the first chart-topping hit of her career. After years of fighting to be heard, Dolly Parton had officially arrived. But massive success brought new problems too. As Dolly's fame exploded across country music, her husband Carl Dean found himself getting dragged into attention he never wanted. Every once in a while, he would quietly drive Dolly to appearances at the Grand Ole Opry and support her from the sidelines. But according to people close to them, Carl hated almost everything about celebrity life. The cameras, tuxedos, reporters, and non-stop attention completely exhausted him. Carl was the kind of man who simply wanted a peaceful, private life away from all the chaos. But once Dolly became one of country music's fastest rising stars, even basic errands became difficult. Trips to auto parts stores or restaurants suddenly turned into autograph sessions. Fans constantly approached him, hoping to get closer to Dolly through him. One night, while Dolly and Carl were eating together at a restaurant, fans kept crowding around their table. Carl became visibly irritated, while Dolly calmly brushed it off and joked that the fans were not really there for him anyway. As invitations to award shows and celebrity events kept pouring in, Dolly hoped Carl might occasionally join her. Eventually, he agreed to attend one major event in Nashville. He rented a tuxedo and tried his best to make it through the night, even though he clearly looked uncomfortable from the beginning. The second the event ended, Dolly noticed Carl practically ripping the tuxedo off inside the car. The formal clothes, cameras, and non-stop attention had completely drained him. That was the moment Carl finally made his feelings crystal clear. He told Dolly he loved her fully and supported her dreams, but that world was never going to be his. He had no interest in spending his life pretending to enjoy glamorous celebrity events that made him miserable. Dolly understood immediately. After that night, she stopped pressuring him to attend public events, and together they settled into a system that worked perfectly for their marriage. Dolly handled the fame while Carl stayed far away from the spotlight, and somehow that balance became one of the strongest parts of their relationship. Friends close to the couple later revealed their happiest moments were often the simplest ones. Producer Fred Foster once shared that Dolly and Carl loved taking road trips together. They would head west for camping trips or drive down to Florida looking for quiet time away from the craziness of fame. Carl hated flying, so most of their adventures happened on the road, cruising through small towns and back highways together. To outsiders, their marriage seemed unusual compared to flashy Hollywood relationships. But for Dolly and Carl, that simple life away from cameras was exactly what kept their bond so strong. Carl Dean carried that same attitude even into one of Dolly Parton's biggest creations, Dollywood. While most celebrity spouses would have wanted VIP treatment, Carl reportedly preferred standing in line and buying his own ticket like everybody else. He had no interest in using Dolly's fame for himself. He wanted a quiet, normal life away from attention. While Carl stayed far from celebrity culture, Dolly quietly became one of the smartest businesswomen in entertainment. One of the biggest examples came during what fans now call the Elvis situation. Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis Presley's manager, reached out with huge news. Elvis wanted to record Dolly's song, "I Will Always Love You." At first, Dolly was thrilled because she was a massive Elvis fan, but there was one major condition. Elvis's team reportedly wanted a large share of the publishing rights in exchange for recording the song. Many young artists would have accepted instantly just for the opportunity. But Dolly understood something a lot of performers ignored back then. Ownership mattered. She knew keeping control of her songs could protect her future and her family for years to come. In the end, Dolly trusted her instincts and walked away from the deal. It shocked people at the time because Elvis had enormous power in the industry. But history proved she made the right choice. By holding on to the publishing rights, Dolly kept control over one of the most valuable songs in music history. Then, in 1974, Dolly released the song that changed everything again. Jolene. The haunting track told the story of a woman terrified of losing her husband to another woman. Dolly later admitted the inspiration partly came from a bank teller who flirted heavily with Carl Dean. The song exploded worldwide. By early 1974, Jolene reached #1 on the country charts and became a huge international hit, especially in the United Kingdom. The success transformed Dolly from a country singer into a global superstar. But even with all the fame, Dolly realized she was not making nearly as much money as people assumed. Frustrated with the situation, she reportedly traveled to New York and confronted record executives directly. Dolly believed they still did not fully understand the kind of star they had in front of them, and honestly, she was right again. As Dolly's empire grew bigger, Carl Dean stayed almost exactly the same. He avoided interviews, ignored Hollywood culture, and shut down reporters whenever they tried asking about his private life. That separation became one of the biggest reasons their marriage lasted so long. While Dolly belonged to the public, Carl belonged only to himself. Then came one of the saddest chapters in their story. In 2019, reports surfaced claiming Carl had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. For a man who spent his life fiercely independent and private, the illness slowly started taking away everything he valued most. Over the following years, Carl's condition reportedly worsened badly. Dolly, who spent decades balancing non-stop fame and touring, suddenly found herself becoming his full-time caregiver. By early 2025, his condition had reportedly become extremely serious. Carl struggled with confusion, memory loss, and additional health problems. Friends described a heartbreaking transformation. The quiet man who once loved road trips through small southern towns had become almost entirely housebound. Then the COVID-19 pandemic made things even more frightening. Because Carl's immune system had become fragile, Dolly reportedly reduced staff around the home and limited visits to protect him. People close to her said she feared the virus could completely overwhelm his body if he became infected. That heartbreaking chapter finally ended on March 3, 2025, when Dolly announced Carl Dean had passed away at the age of 82. After Carl's death, fans started paying closer attention to Dolly's old interviews about their marriage. Over the years, she had occasionally described the relationship as open, though not in the scandalous way tabloids tried to suggest. For Dolly, it mostly meant harmless flirting, playful teasing, and giving each other space. She admitted both she and Carl enjoyed flirting sometimes, but always insisted the line stopped there. Underneath all the jokes and charm, their marriage remained deeply loyal. Still, rumors followed Dolly constantly throughout her career. Once she became a movie star during the 1980s, tabloids repeatedly linked her to famous actors she worked with. Fans saw the chemistry she shared on screen and immediately assumed there had to be something happening behind the scenes too. One of the biggest names connected to those rumors was Burt Reynolds. In 1982, Dolly starred alongside him in The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, one of the biggest movies of her acting career. Dolly later admitted she had a genuine crush on Burt during filming, and audiences could clearly feel the chemistry between them. Rumors exploded claiming they were secretly involved. But according to Dolly, the gossip was never true. She admitted she found Burt attractive and enjoyed flirting during filming, but insisted it never became an actual affair. To Dolly, playful chemistry was simply part of entertainment. Eventually, Carl even learned to laugh at the tabloid stories too. Dolly once shared that they would stand together in grocery store checkout lines and see magazine covers screaming about her supposed romances with Burt Reynolds. Instead of becoming jealous, Carl eventually accepted that wild rumors came with being married to a superstar. Then came another famous co-star, Sylvester Stallone. Dolly chose Stallone as her co-star in the 1984 musical film Rhinestone. At the time, Dolly later admitted she was struggling emotionally and dealing with health issues. According to her, Stallone's humor helped lift her spirits during filming. Even though Rhinestone was not a huge success with critics, Dolly always described the experience as one of the most fun projects she ever worked on. Their chemistry during interviews and press tours caused another flood of rumors. But once again, there was never proof of anything romantic happening between them. Another man constantly linked to Dolly was Kenny Rogers. Together, they created some of country music's most loved duets, and their chemistry felt so believable that many fans assumed they had to be secretly in love. But Dolly repeatedly insisted their relationship was purely friendship. She loved Kenny deeply, but more like family than a romantic partner. The playful flirting became part of the act because audiences loved it so much. Still, Dolly later admitted there was one emotional relationship during her marriage that affected her more deeply than any public rumor ever did. She described it as an affair of the heart. The man involved was Greg Perry, one of her musical collaborators. Dolly reportedly became emotionally attached to him because of his intelligence and talent. But the relationship eventually collapsed while working on music connected to The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. The fallout devastated her emotionally. Dolly later admitted it became one of the darkest periods of her life. The heartbreak inspired the song, "What a Heartache." But even music was not enough to fully ease the pain she carried. At one point, Dolly revealed she became so emotionally overwhelmed that she briefly considered taking her own life. According to her, her dog Popeye interrupted the moment and helped pull her out of the darkness before she could do something irreversible. After surviving that painful chapter, Dolly reportedly decided she never wanted to experience that kind of emotional chaos again. Despite all the rumors and gossip throughout the years, she always maintained that Carl Dean remained the true love of her life. And in classic Dolly fashion, even her celebrity crushes eventually became part of her comedy routine. One of her favorite playful targets in recent years became Jimmy Fallon. Whenever Dolly appeared on The Tonight Show, the two leaned heavily into funny flirtation that audiences absolutely loved. One especially memorable interview happened while Dolly promoted music connected to the film Dumplin', starring Jennifer Aniston. During the conversation, Dolly joked that Carl Dean had always had a huge crush on Jennifer Aniston. Then Dolly pushed the joke even further with comments so outrageous that Jimmy Fallon nearly fell out of his chair laughing. The audience erupted while Dolly sat there calm as ever, clearly enjoying every second of the chaos she created. Moments like that perfectly explained why Dolly Parton stayed beloved for so many decades. She knew exactly how to make people laugh, keep audiences curious, and entertain millions without ever fully exposing her private world. At the end of the day, though, all of that charm and teasing always came back to one thing: Carl Dean. The quiet man who stayed far away from Hollywood somehow remained the center of Dolly Parton's world the entire time. After everything Dolly Parton went through, the fame, heartbreak, rumors, and massive success, one thing never really changed. No matter how bright the spotlight became, Carl Dean stayed the quiet center of her world. Their relationship confused people for decades because it never followed the normal Hollywood rules. But maybe that's exactly why it lasted so long. Even after all the gossip and wild stories, Dolly always came back to the same truth: Carl was her person. And now, with him gone, fans are looking at her life and music in a completely different way. Suddenly, songs like Jolene and I Will Always Love You feel even more personal than ever before. What do you think was the real secret behind Dolly and Carl's relationship lasting nearly 60 years? Let us know in the comments below.